Hey guys, Pat Tokuyama here. In this video I wanted to do a review of some of my favorite tools that I use for both time-lapse photography as well as my video productions. So we have some filters here that I wanted to share with you. The first is going to be this Pro ND8, this is the 64. This is the ND8 CPL. This is the combination neutral density filter plus a circular polarizing filter. So not only decreases the amount of light that's getting to your camera, but it also helps to polarize the light so that you don't have such a glare if you have some water in your scenery, for example, and it also helps to enhance the colors naturally. So this is the 67mm size. Most of my lenses are 67mm, which is why I chose to purchase these. In general, if you don't have any filters yet, try to think about what lenses you might use in the future and get the filter that would be for that larger lens size, because then you would be able to use step-up rings for other lenses which have a smaller filter size, as opposed to having to buy filters over and over again for each different set of lenses. So for me, I have some Tamron lenses which I use, and they fit the 67mm filter size, which is why I purchased these. So Polar Pro is a brand, if you haven't heard of before. They make a lot of different lens filters. I first came across them when I got my DJI Mavic drone many years ago when that first came out, so that I could get more cinematic footage, is what they call it, whatever that means. I think it just means footage that looks good, because you could use a lower shutter speed when you're in a brightly lit situation, like in the middle of the day, for example. When you shoot down at a lower shutter speed, I usually use 1/50. You're going to need a ND filter to decrease the amount of light so that you can maintain that shutter speed without getting overexposed. So that's one of the reasons why I purchased these for my video production, because sometimes I'm shooting outside and I want to use a lower or a faster aperture, which means more light is going to get into the lens, and I need to compensate by using an ND filter, and that's what helps me to do that. So these are relatively neutral in the color cast. So some ND filters or circular polarizing filters as well may cause a slight discoloration in the final image. I've used a handful of them over the years, and I found that the Polar Pros, I think all of them have their own signature colorization. You're never going to get 100% of a neutral color cast, unfortunately. So I think for me, this was the flavor that I found the most appealing for my needs, and that's why I purchased two of them. So this is the ND8, and then we also have the ND64 here, which is going to be even darker. So you can see the amount of light. You can't really see through this one at all. This one's a little bit less dark, so you can actually see through it. You can see the little fish there on my tablecloth. So this is the ND8 versus the 64. 64 is going to be darker, of course. So if you have a faster lens, you want to maintain that shallow depth of field or the bokeh when you're shooting video, or if you're even doing a time lapse or something where you want to blur the motion, you can actually do that with both of these for your photography as well. Those are a few things that I wanted to share with you regarding those. Also some pros and cons regarding the ND filters. These are static, so there's variable ND filters as well, which you can choose to purchase, where you can adjust the amount of light that gets through. But there's some issues with those, and that's one of the reasons why I don't use them, is because it can cause something called like cross-hatching, where it looks like there's an X across the image. And I have noticed that when I tried the variable ND filters out for the first time. Also, one of the other things that I think you should keep in mind when you're looking at these is to consider the use. So if you're going to be using these for photography versus video, and if you think that you're going to be needing the polarization piece as well, rather than getting a separate circular polarizing filter plus a separate ND filter, you can get one that's in a single filter. And that's going to be one less thing that you need to worry about, and you'll get the benefits of both of those at the same time. Those are a couple of the reasons why I decided to choose these. Overall, very happy with them, and I use them on a regular basis. The circular polarizing filters are best, when the sun is at a certain angle. Of course, when it gets darker towards the golden hour or the blue hour, it may not be as effective in decreasing or improving your image, so keep that in mind as well. And next I have a couple more filters for you if you're in the market for those. This next one is a Breakthrough Photography ND filter. So this is a 6-stop ND filter, no polarization on this lens. And I was curious because this brand actually has a lot of good reviews on Amazon as well. And even though I usually, if I'm doing a time lapse, for example, I'm usually using 2 cameras. So usually those 2 cameras might be enough, depending on how bright it is outside. I'd be using the N64 or something that would give me 4 to 6 stops less light. And that's one of the reasons why I got this. So this brand, Breakthrough Photography, is also supposed to be relatively neutral as far as the color cast goes. And the benefits are not only that, but they have a really good warranty. I haven't had a chance to use it. Hopefully I never will, but I think it's 25 years, I believe, if you register the product with them. So it's one of the longest, at least that I've seen in the photography world. And their products are really well made. So I think as soon as you get your hands on one of these, you'll know right away. This is brass, so it has a very nice and sturdy feel. It doesn't get stuck when you're twisting these on and off from your lens, or if you happen to screw this onto a step-up ring, or even put another lens on top of it. It feels very well made. It's easy to remove because there's little notches here, and it does what it's supposed to do as far as decreasing the amount of light that gets through the lens, and the color looks very nice and very natural. So definitely would recommend them for anybody who is looking for an ND filter just by itself. They have various levels. They have like, I think 2-stop, 4-stop, and 6-stop, and maybe even a 10 or 12-stop. But this one here is a 6-stop, which is perfect for my needs for shooting video or getting some of that motion blur if I wanted to. And there are also different levels. I think X2 is the lower level in terms of the quality of the glass, I believe. X4 I think is in the middle. So this was the one that I chose. So that was the Breakthrough Photography ND filter. Who it's for: somebody who wants to be able to use fast apertures when you're shooting a object, you want to get that shallow depth of field, or you want to maintain that motion blur when you're shooting video outside using that slower shutter speed. So next we have another Breakthrough Photography filter. This one is just the UV filter. So the UV filter doesn't do much. Actually, it does a lot. If you have ever dropped your camera on the ground and cracked your lens, you might have regretted not putting a UV filter on there to protect it from getting cracked. Usually if I am not shooting with any filters and I'm walking around outside, I try to put the UV filter on. One, because it's an extra layer of protection. UV isn't really something that you need to be worried about for your camera lens, but this barrier is one barrier in front of the front glass element of your lens, which will protect it in case you drop it or something hits it on accident. Totally up to you, but the pro is that it's extra protection. The con is that it's another layer in between your lens and what it is that you're trying to shoot. So if this gets dirty, you're gonna have to clean it. There's always trade-offs, right? So you're gonna have to decide for yourself if this is something that you want. Maybe you already have something like this and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So there's that. That was the UV filter. Here we wanted to talk about next was the CPL filter. So this is another Breakthrough Photography. As you can tell, I like this brand. This is just a circular polarizing filter by itself. So whenever I don't need the ND filter, I wanted the option to just use the circular polarizing filter. Like I mentioned, it helps to improve the colors naturally, as well as decreasing any glare, harsh glare from bodies of water that you might be seeing. If you've ever looked out at a lake, taken a picture of it, if there's a lot of glare because you're not using a polarizing filter, you won't be able to really see into the water. But if you put one on and you adjust it correctly so that the angle of light is managed by the filter, then you'll be able to see into the water a little bit and some of that glare will be gone. So it'll look much nicer. Well made. It has the same design as the other filters with the notches. It's made of brass and does what it's supposed to do. Okay, so just a couple other filters left. You may have not heard of these other filters. Here is the first one. This is the Tiffen Pro ND8 Black Pro Mist filter. So this might be something more so for video, using these types of things at least. So if you haven't heard of the Black Pro Mist filter, this is a Tiffen brand version of it. And basically what it does is provide a mist onto your image or your field of view, whatever it is that your camera's pointed at, to soften it. So I know everybody is super into sharp lenses sharp pictures where everything is needlepoint perfect, and they always want everything super sharp. Well, this does the opposite. This makes everything soft and blurry, and depending on how you're using it, more natural, more dreamy. And it's a great way to change things up if you're looking for a different look in your photography or for your videos. So the 1/8 is a little bit less